Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the second video on fraud, internal control, and cash. And in this video, we will solve exercises on fraud and internal control, principles of internal control activities, and internal control principles to cash receipts and cash disbursements. Please like, subscribe, and share my channel to search for accounting lessons and hit the notification bell button to alert for the latest video. For all of your questions, comments, and suggestions, please put them in the comment section below. And for webinar and guest speaker invites, please send me a message at accountingamir@gmail.com. We hope that this video helps students in their academic development and teachers in enhancing their lesson plans and teaching methodologies. So let us look into the first exercise. Match each situation with the fraud triangle factor, opportunity, financial pressure, or rationalization that best describes it. So an employee monthly credit card payments are nearly 75% of their monthly earnings. So obviously this is an example of financial pressure. An employee earns minimum wage at a firm that has reported record earnings for each of the last 5 years, and that is rationalization. An employee has an expensive gambling habit, and that is obviously financial pressure. An employee has check writing and signing responsibilities for a small company and is also responsible for reconciling the bank account. So this is the example of opportunity. Let us move on to the next exercise. Goan Wallander is the new owner of Bennett Company. She has heard about internal control but is not clear about its importance for her business. Explain Goan the 4 purposes of internal control and give her one application of each purpose for Bennett Company. So the purposes of internal control are to safeguard the company assets from the employee theft, robbery, or unauthorized use. So an application for Bennett Company is the use of a cash register to safeguard the assets. Then another purpose is to enhance the accuracy and reliability of a company's accounting records by reducing the risk of errors, unintentional mistakes obviously, and irregularities, that is intentional mistakes and misrepresentations in the accounting process. An application for Bennett Company is preparation of a bank reconciliation statement. Then the third purpose is to increase efficiency of operations. An application is assignment of responsibility to specific employees. Then finally, to ensure compliance with laws and regulations, an application is use of cash register tapes to account to document sales and applicable sales taxes. So all these purposes are important to the success of any business endeavor. Okay. The internal control procedures in Philips Company make the following provisions. Identify the principles of internal control that are being followed in each case. Number 1. Employee who have physical custody of assets do not have access to the accounting records, and that is segregation of duties. Then each month the assets on hand are compared to the accounting records by an internal auditor, and that is independent internal verification. Then a pre-numbered shipping document is prepared for each shipment of goods to customers, and that is documentation procedure. Okay, Alstat company has the following internal control procedures over cash receipts. Identify the internal control principles that is applicable to each procedure. So all over the counter receipts are registered on cash registers, that is physical control. All cashiers are bonded, and that is human resource control. Daily cash counts are made by cashier department supervisors, and this is independent internal verification. Then the duties of receiving cash, recording cash, and having custody of cash are assigned to different individuals, and that is segregation of duties. And finally, only cashier may operate cash registers, and this is establishment of responsibility. Okay. Now, while examining cash receipts information, the accounting department determined the following information. We have opening cash balance of 150. Cash on hand is 1125, and cash sales as per register tapes is 988. Prepare the required journal entry based upon the cash count sheet. So obviously, first of all, cash is going to be debit, and this will be 1125 minus 150, the opening cash balance, that is the so cash is going to be debit by 975.74. Then now we are going to credit sales revenue, and this will be credited by 988.62, and the difference obviously will be debit as cash over and short, and the difference is 12.88. Let us move on to the next exercise. Nadon company has the following internal control procedures over cash disbursements. Identify the internal control principle that is applicable to each procedure. Now, company checks are pre-numbered. So this is documentation procedures. The bank statement is reconciled monthly by an internal auditor, that is independent internal verification. Blank checks are stored in a safe in the treasurer's office, and this is example of physical control. Only the treasurer or assistant treasurer may sign checks, and that is establishment of responsibility. And then finally, check signers are not allowed to record cash disbursement transactions, and that is segregation of duties. Let us move on to the next exercise. Bauer is uncertain about the control features of a bank account. Explain the control benefits of a checking account and a bank statement. So, the use of a checking account minimizes the amount of currency that must be kept on hand. Therefore, cash is safeguarded by using the bank as a depository and clearing house for checks written and received. A bank statement provides a double record of a depositor's bank's transactions. It also is used in making periodic independent bank reconciliations. Then identify which control activity is violated in each of the following situations, and explain how the situation creates an opportunity for fraud or inappropriate accounting practices. Now, once a month, the sales department sends sales invoices to the accounting department to be recorded. So, this violates the control activity of documentation procedure. Then Greek Musky orders merchandise for Ross Company. He also receives merchandise and authorizes payment for merchandise. This violates the control activity of segregation of duties. Then several clerks at Tirando's groceries use the same cash register drawer, and this violates the control activity of establishment of responsibility. Okay. Mark Graziano is concerned with control over mail receipts at Grazi's Sporting Goods. All mail receipts are opened by Glenn Scragg. Glenn sends the checks to the accounting department where they are stamped for deposit only. The accounting department records and deposits the mail receipts weekly. Mark asks your help in installing a good system of internal control over mail receipts. So, all mail receipts should be opened in the presence of two mail clerks. Now, these clerks should immediately stamp each check for deposit only. The mail clerks should prepare in triplicate a list of the checks received each day. The checks and the original copy of the list should be sent on to the cashier's department each day, and a copy of the list is sent to the accounting department for recording and for the recording purposes. So the clerks also help. Also, they keep a copy of this statement or this check. Okay, bank employees use a system known as the maker checker system. An employee will record an entry in the appropriate journal and then a supervisor will verify and approve the entry. These days, as all of the bank's accounts are computerized, the employee first enters a batch of entries into the computer and then the entries are posted automatically to the general ledger account after the supervisor approves them on the system. Access to the computer system is password protected and task specific, which means that the computer system will not allow the employee to approve a transaction on or the supervisor to record a transaction. So identify the principle of internal control inherent in the make checker procedure used by the bank. So it inherits two procedures. One is segregation of duties. The employee records the transaction. The supervisor verifies and approves the transaction. And the second is the physical control. That is, access to the computer system is password protected and task specific. Okay, Lisa's Pizza operates strictly on a carry out basis. Customers pick up their orders at a counter where a clerk exchanges the pizza for cash. While at the counter, the customer can see other employees making the pizzas and the large oven in which the pizzas are baked. Identify the 6 principles of internal control and give an example of each principle that you might observe when picking up your pizza. Note, it may not be possible to observe all the principles. It's fine. So first of all, in the first may be the establishment of responsibility. The counter clerk is responsible for handling cash and other employees are responsible for making the pizzas. The second is the segregation of duties. Employees who make the pizzas do not handle cash. The third is documentation procedures. The counter clerk uses your order invoice in registering the sale on the cash register. The cash register produces a tape to all sales. Fourth is the physical controls. A cash register is used to record the sales. Then independent internal verification. That is, the counter clerk in handling the pizza compares the size of the pizza with the size indicated on the order. And finally, the human resource control, and we can see there is no visible application in this example or exercise. Okay. The following control procedures are used in Danner Company for over-the-counter cash receipt. Cashiers are experienced, thus they are not bonded. All over-the-counter receipts are registered by 3 clerks who share a cash register with a single cash drawer. To minimize the risk of robbery, cash in excess of 100 is stored in an unlocked attached case in the stock room until it is deposited in the bank. At the end of each day, the total receipts are counted by the cashier on duty and reconciled to the cash register total. The company accountant makes the bank deposit and then records the day's receipt. For each procedure, explain the weakness in internal control and identify the control principle that is violated. For each weakness, suggest a change in the procedure that will result in a good internal control. So first of all, cashier are experienced that they are not bonded. So this is actually the weakness. The weakness is that the cashiers are not bonded and background checks are not conducted. So um, so this is the weakness, and the principle that is violated is human resource control, and the recommended change is that the cashier should be bonded and background checks should be performed. Then second, all over the counter receipts are registered by 3 clerks who share a cash register with a single cash drawer. Now, the weakness is the inability to establish responsibility of cash on a specific clerk. So, this violates the principle of establishment of responsibility, and there should be separate cash drawer and register codes for each cash clerk. In the third case, the weakness is that cash is not adequately protected from theft. So the principle that is violated is the physical control, and the recommended change is that the cash should be stored in a safe until it is deposited in the bank. In the fourth case, the weakness is cash is not independently counted. So the principle that is violated here is the independent internal verification, and the recommended change is a cashier office supervisor should count cash and reconcile the total to the cash register tape. Finally, in the fifth case, the weakness is that the accountant should not handle cash. The principle that is violated is segregation of duties, and the cashier's department should make the deposits. Okay. The following control procedures are used in Kaza boutique shop for cash disbursements each week. So we have these different situations and we have to follow the same. For each procedure, explain the weakness in internal control and identify the internal control principle that is violated. For each weakness, suggest the change. So in the first case, the weakness is that the checks are not stored in a secure area. The principle that it violates is the physical control, and the recommended change is that the checks should be stored in a safe or logged file drawer. In the second case, the weakness is the approval and payment of bills is done by the same individual. The principle that it violates is the segregation of duties, and the store manager should approve bills for payments and the treasurer should sign and issue checks. In the third case, the weakness is unauthorized employees making purchases. There should be establishment of responsibility, and the recommended change is that only employees granted authority should make purchases for the store. But here another weakness is the use of cash instead of checks. There are no pre-numbered invoices. So the principle that it violates is the documentation procedure, and the recommended change is that the purchases should be paid with pre-numbered checks and the purchases should be documented by a pre-numbered invoice signed by the seller. In the fourth case, the weakness is filling does not prevent a bill from being paid more than once. So the principle that it violated is the documentation procedure, and the bills should be stamped, paid, and after payment. In the last case, the weakness is that the bank reconciliation is not independently prepared. So the principle it violates is the independent internal verification, and the recommended change is someone with no other responsibilities relating to cash should prepare the bank reconciliation statement. At Rice Company, checks are not pre-numbered because both the purchasing agent and the treasurer are authorized to issue checks. Each signer has access to unissued checks kept in an unlocked file cabinet. The purchasing agent pays all bills pertaining to goods purchased for resale. Prior to payment, the purchasing agent determines that the goods have been received and verifies the mathematical accuracy of the vendor's invoice. After payment, the invoice is filled by vendor and the purchasing agent records the payment in the cash disbursements journal. The treasurer pays all other bills following approval by authorized employees. After payment, the treasurer stamps all bills paid, files them by payment date, and records the checks in the cash disbursements journal. Rice Company maintains one checking account that is reconciled by the treasurer. So list the weaknesses and we have to identify the improvements as well. So the weakness is that the checks are not pre-numbered. So documentation procedures are not adopted. So the suggestion is that the checks should be pre-numbered. Yet another is that the purchasing agent signs the check. So they are not able to establish responsibility in case of any fraud. So only the treasurer's department personnel should sign the checks. The third weakness is unissued checks are stored in unlocked file cabinets. So obviously this is the problem of physical control, and the suggested improvement is unissued checks should be stored in a locked file cabinet with access restricted to authorized personnel only. The fourth weakness is that the purchasing agent approves and pays for goods purchased, and that is segregation of duties. So the suggestion for improvement is that the purchasing should approve bills for payment by the treasurer. The fifth weakness is that after the payment, the invoice is filed. So the weakness is of documentation procedure. So the invoice should be stamped and paid. That is the suggestion. The sixth weakness is that the purchasing agent records payments in cash disbursements journal. So the weakness is of segregation of duties, and the suggestion would be that only accounting department personnel should record cash disbursements. Then the another weakness is that the treasurer records the checks in cash disbursement journal, and this is again the problem of segregation of duties, and the suggested answer would be that only accounting department personnel should record cash disbursements. Another weakness is that the treasurer reconciles the bank statement, so there is no independent internal verification. So the suggestion would be that an internal auditor should reconcile the bank statement. So this completes the second video on fraud, internal control and cash. I hope you have enjoyed the presentation, and if you found value in this video, then please like, subscribe and share my channel and hit the notification bell button to alert you for the latest video. For webinar and guest speaker invites, please send me a message at accountingamir@gmail.com. Remember, effective questioning brings insight, which fuels curiosity, which cultivates wisdom. If you have any question or any suggestion regarding this session, then please put them in the comment box below or by email, and inshallah I will reply you back. Thank you so much and happy learning.